Hello, Internet. Welcome. Seth Skorkowski coming at you live from my game room. Figured I'd just do a live stream on a Friday night. I don't know if anybody's showing up. Maybe people have more of a social life than I do. But I figured with the GenCon and the ENnies and all that stuff, I could either do a pre-recorded video, thanking everybody and talking about what all happened there. But those videos take like 3 days to do. So I figured, you know what, let's just do a live stream. I've been planning on doing one since when I hit 50,000 subscribers. It's like, yeah, I hit 40. I won the gold ENnie. Might as well have a live stream and chat, answer some questions and that sort of thing. Can everybody hear me all right? I'm technically incompetent, as anybody who's watched any of my old videos should know by now. So I don't the audio quality is great. Thank you. I never know. I'm just kind of talking at a camera. I can kind of see myself below it. It's really creepy. But anyway, last week I did GenCon for the first time, and that was wild. I think the largest con I did before that was like 2,500 or 3,000 people, which that's pretty much a single line at GenCon. So that was wild. I came as part of the Writers Symposium, doing some author panels, that sort of thing. And then Friday night, I went in and went to the ENnie Awards, and I won this little guy. So the gold ENnie for best online content, as you can see. Thank you, everybody. This was a huge honor. So you can see on the front, ENnies 2019, and then on the back, it looks exactly like the front. So yeah, pretty much the same thing. I think it would have been kind of cool if they had put, I don't know, something else on the back, like, I don't know, like a picture of Gary Busey or something like that. Yeah, that way it's like, oh yeah, I won the ENnie, this is great. Then like, boom, Busey. So I don't know. They don't ask my opinion when I make these things. I'm going to have to figure out how to hang that on my wall. But did Jack pick it up? Well, I went up to the stage dressed in a suit and my fedora, and I talked like myself. I kind of fumbled through an awkward acceptance speech. I was actually a bit surprised that I won it because I saw some of the competition that I had, and after that, I had Jack, bid everybody a good day, and then I went back down. I was sitting with the Chaosium crew. That was really cool. They invited me to sit with them, but due to my schedule, I actually had to be carrying with me this backpack and this rolling suitcase. So I'm sitting with the whole Chaosium crew, and I've got like a suitcase between my knees and a backpack. I was like, I felt like this kind of like awkward, weird jerk the whole time. And but eventually, during the intermission, I got to like stash all that stuff in the back. So it was really cool. Will I do Shadowrun? I've never actually. Well, I did play Shadowrun once. I don't know if that counts. It was like back in the '90s, and we were all in high school, and we didn't really know what we were doing. So I don't know enough about Shadowrun to ever talk about it one way or the other. Cyberpunk 2020 always drew me more toward it. But I am looking forward to Cyberpunk Red coming out. I picked up a copy of their Jumpstart kit that the nice people with Artel Sorian gave to me as a review copy, and then I went totally and embarrassingly fanboy on Mike Pondsmith. I've never gone fanboy before, and it just came out, so that was awkward. Let's see. Am I going to review it? Hell yes, but I'm going to have to play it. I don't review anything unless I play it. There's a lot of people out there they'll read a rule book and then they'll kind of throw together some sort of review about it, and either good or bad. And if you have an experience with the game, you can quickly identify that the person doing the review has clearly no actual experience with it. So I always make sure with anything I review, I have either run it personally or played it personally and feel that I know enough about it that I can actually kind of formulate a real opinion. So yes, I will review the Jumpstart kit, once I've read it through enough, and it does have an adventure in there, and I run the adventure, we'll try that out, and I'll do a review at that time. Oh, holy crap! Gordito, $5. That was. Thank you for your video, Seth. You've inspired a little group to give Call of Cthulhu a try. We'll be running a group of Call of Cthulhu newbies. Okay, well, great. I love Call of Cthulhu, as anybody who's watched my stuff might have figured out. Wonderful game. Wonderful game. That was it's one of the first games I ever picked up where I read it, and it was kind of like this, like, oh my God, where has this been my whole life? Which I knew where it was. There was a lot of myths about it that had chased me away. So, let's see. Showed your videos to my group, and they love your story, especially the bone saw. Oh my God, that was a trip of a sword. For those of you that have never seen that video, you can probably go check it out. No need to recount it, but it was over the most ridiculously awesome Vorpal blade, which probably wouldn't have been as awesome if there hadn't been a 20 rolled at the absolute perfect time, with the player not doing the absolutely perfect thing at that moment of acting like they don't care because he was a little frustrated. And Jordan, holy crap, man, that is awesome. Oh, it was great meeting you too. So for those who aren't familiar with Jordan, the PH is silent, we met at a GenCon. He has a great channel about mostly Forgotten Realms and D&D stuff. But let's see, what else we have? Do I have an opinion of Dungeon Crawl Classics? Not really, mostly because I've got all the first edition stuff. I'm masterfully versed in first and second edition. Some friends of mine have played Dungeon Crawl Classics. They like it, but really a lot of the classical fantasy games anymore, they really have to kind of be spectacular to draw my interest in them. So I haven't given it a shot yet. Let's see. Caliber 11. Well, thank you. Call of Cthulhu is my favorite system. Well, yes, it's wonderful. For those of you who never tried the BRP system, it is really cool. Let's see. I have no idea what that guy's say. Currently running Delta Green. Man, Delta Green is one that I have been wanting to try for a while. But part of the problem is just my own schedule with myself and my players. But mostly what we're doing is we're just doing a normal game with a normal group, and then I just happen to do videos about it on the side. So it has expanded what we're playing since I've started doing the reviews, but it takes a while to talk your players into picking up a new system. So I can't just like every week be like, oh my God, we're going to try this new game, because they would quickly beat me to death. So Delta Green was one of those. I talked to him about it, and it's like, well, why don't we just do Cthulhu Modern Day? I'm like, yeah. But I went through their quick start guide, and that was pretty cool. I like everything that I've read about Delta Green. I did pick up a little Delta Green pin for Jack to wear once I can eventually get around to doing some actual Delta Green games. Let's see. Man, these things are like flying by, so I'm sorry if I am neglecting anyone's questions there. Ever thought doing a video converting old modules to newer, different systems? I have before. I don't know. There's not really a video I can think of on the subject. Then again, many of my videos started off with that same sentence. When I talked about modules, there was a game that used to be called Cyberspace that I would do games of cyberpunk from. It was like this collection with I guess 5, maybe 6 adventures. It was called Edge On, and it was a system called Cyberspace. I ran it with Cyberpunk with minimal conversions. It kind of depends on how rules heavy a module is. I found it far more difficult to do Secret of Bone Hill, which is a favorite old first edition module, as 5th edition, mostly because the editions had so much mechanical changes that had happened over that time that I was trying to almost make it as true to the original as I could, and that ended up being this complete nightmare, because some of the creatures were drastically more or less powerful than they had been, and certain spells had changed up. So if I was to ever do that again, I would not try to be as original as to the monsters, but more to the spirit of the monsters. And that's really the big thing I recommend when trying to convert an old module, is be more, I guess, attuned to the spirit of what the scenario was than what the actual words are, because that just leads to a rabbit hole of paperwork and kind of sucks the fun out of it. Love your channel. Any chance you'll be reviewing Massive Nyarlathotep? Hold on, it scrolled down before I could see who you were. Norse Codes Archive. Well, thank you. $10. That is it's freaking weird. This is awesome. Mass is a campaign for Call of Cthulhu that I really do want to run. I actually picked up the prop set for it when it came out, when H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society released that. They did kind of a sale before they did the mass release, so I picked up a copy of it. It is in my closet. I haven't even opened the thing yet, which means I've had it for a year now. But then I was doing a game with the How We Roll podcast crew that Scott Dorward was running, and we're going through chapter 1 of Massive Nyarlathotep, kind of a new chapter that they added. And in a year, we've made it 2 sessions because we're trying to get this group of like podcasters and YouTubers, and they're all game masters, trying to get their schedules to work out. And evidently organizing a group of GMs is like 1,000 times harder than it is to organize a group of players, especially because we're all spread out across the world. I don't know if I'll ever be able to run Massive Nyarlathotep. Part of that's just because it does take a very long time, and it kind of depends what we're in the mood for. I want to, but we ran Two-Headed Serpent as a Pulp Cthulhu campaign last year, and that took us 9 months. And Two-Headed Serpent's kind of a cakewalk fast compared to Mass. So I don't know if my players and I are going to be able to do a campaign just that huge. But due to my review policy, I'm not going to review it till we actually try to run it. If I do run it, I'd probably do it in the same vein that I did Two-Headed Serpent, where it was more of a review diary, or a campaign diary where I tell the story of the characters. I'm actually planning to do a campaign diary like that for Traveler right now. Not 100%. We'll see. We're actually going to be playing the first game of that later this month. And depending on how that goes, I might approach the review for it that way. Okay. Oh, Sumro. Hey, man. Watch you since you started. Yeah. Sumro, thank you for the $5, man. It is... he is actually one of the people that was around when I probably had like, I don't know, like the first 50 subscribers that, aren't your mom. And so, yeah, thanks a lot. Let's see. I'm scrolling down. I'm getting chatty. Let's see. Linnea Glasser, thank you for the $5. Ever interested in an event or meet and greet in Austin? Well, yes. Austin is, it's in my state. It's not exactly down the street, but it's a couple hours away. Yeah, I would love to do that. In fact, Austin just had a convention last weekend called Armadillo Con, and a lot of my friends went. A lot of friends I hadn't seen in a while that I wanted to see that are on the con circuit, but it was the same weekend as GenCon. So it was like, well, do I go to Armadillo Con or do I go to GenCon? And yeah, I chose GenCon. But yeah, any other events or anything down in Austin, absolutely love to, especially give me a chance to visit some of my friends down there. Let's see. Sean Christopher, what take you for to release a Scott Brown based scenario for Cyberpunk? Wow. So Scott Brown, I don't know. I have been quietly waiting to get some sort of notice on that video. I don't think there's any reason I should have to take it down, but you never know. Scott Brown is a real agency in my area, and so if I did any sort of scenario with like Cyberpunk Red or anything, I would probably change its name, to like, Steve Green or something like that. I don't think it will be Scott Brown. I think that is when it starts opening up the door to danger. Um, let's see. Jordan would recommend jumping into Call of Cthulhu or finding someone who loves the mythos to ease you in. Um, I tell you what, I jumped into it because I did fall in love with certain aspects of the mythos. And Jordan, you're competent enough game master, you could handle that stuff. The H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society silent film of Call of Cthulhu is actually what turned me on to it. It's a very good interpretation of the original story. A lot of Lovecraft's kind of impossible to film. It was really weird. And so when I watched that, it was when it kind of clicked of like, this is how a Call of Cthulhu game would work. Oh my God. Yeah. I really hadn't known. But after that, if you want to know more about the mythos, BBC Radio 4, I believe, does a spectacular rendition of Shout Over Innsmouth and the mountain at the Mountains of Madness, which kind of have little sound effects in the background. And so those like, in Innsmouth, you can hear a ship's bell ringing in the background. Nice ambience. But you don't need to be an authority on the mythos by any means at all. I think you can get enough from Lovecraft just from watching a couple of those films. Or if it's a non-Lovecraft thing, The Ninth Gate starring Johnny Depp, and then watching the John Carpenter's The Thing. Watch those and go, this is what we're going to play, and you got it. Okay, kind of being overwhelmed. They're flying past. Let's see. Okay. Will there be a SethCon in 2020? Man, I think that'd probably be like me and like 4 friends showing up to anything like that. But thank you, Chris, for the $10. But I think it'll be quite a while before we have anything like a SethCon. Let's see. What is the best way to read your books? Oh, wow, that just flew past. Ha, ha, ha. Wow, this is crazy. Okay. Sliska Melvin, thanks for the $2. Well, if it comes to books, I'm personally an audiobook addict. I got really lucky when it came to my own books. Narrator named R.C. Bray, who did Andy Weir's The Martian, read my books. And those are actually, the first 2 were Audio Award finalists, which is kind of the highest award for audiobooks. So I know we talk about awards. It's like the Audies and the ENnies, like belly buttons. We lost for Dameron due to The Girl with All the Gifts, which I'm not upset about because The Girl with All the Gifts was an amazing audiobook. But so I'd recommend to anyone, if you are an audiobook fan and you're interested in any of my own stuff, R.C. Bray did a fantastic job reading my books. Now my next one that's going to be coming out hopefully next year, that'll be with Blackstone Audio. I do not know anything about who they're going to get to narrate it yet, just because we haven't finished editing the book. So they're not going to work on any of that till after we've got it done. See, Alexander, thank you. Help me become a better DM. He's giving me ideas for my current D&D campaign. We're into session 3 now, and we're looking more into Call of Cthulhu themed stuff. Well, good luck. I'm glad to help. That's actually the stuff that I love to hear, is that people have found to be helpful. Kind of my goal is, if I can't be helpful, at least I can be entertaining. There's always been a lot of Lovecraft elements in Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, just check out the mind flayers. It's really obvious where the mind flayers came from if you know just a little bit about Call of Cthulhu. And I've always liked the horror-esque aspects myself. So I always like those kind of elements that are in D&D, where you could have kind of the darker and forgotten past. Back in first edition, there were Call of Cthulhu gods, and then there was like this They had to pull the book back because they had to pull out the Cthulhu stuff as well as some Elric stuff. So, people are wild to collect that original deities and demigods. I got it back on the shelf behind me, and I am not letting it go. And then there's all sorts of rumors that it was Chaosium made them, and then I read an article that said it wasn't. But Call of Cthulhu has actually always been a part of D&D. It's really only been recently that they've kind of been open about it, because they kind of hid it at first, and then they ignored it, I guess, during when second edition became very tame, because they were getting over the satanic panic things. They didn't want to then talk about like elder gods. But no, I love that. Hope you have fun with it. Let's see. DP, thank you for the $10. That's very sweet. Let me see if I can see. He's not going to give us Dweevil's name. He always looked like a Scot to me. You are close. I was actually planning on doing this thing when I hit 50,000 subscribers. I don't know why I kind of arbitrarily put that number in my head, but I figured like, well, it's far away, so I don't have to deal with it. So I will talk about Dweeble's name then, but it does begin with an S. I live in Denton. I don't wear my Scott Brown shirt in public. I understand. I have worn my Scott Brown shirt in public one time, and that was by accident. I wore it to the gym because I used to work at the University of North Texas, which is also green shirts. So when I go to the gym, I just wear a bunch of my old green UNT shirts. And it was one morning, I was half asleep. I grabbed a green shirt, got to the gym, looked down and saw my Scott Brown motherfucker, get the fuck out shirt. And I'm like, uh-oh. So I kind of quietly walked back in the back, flipped it inside out, and kept going. Now, that is the one time I've worn the Scott Brown shirt in public. I've worn it around the house a few times, and I've worn it at games, but I don't go outside the doors with it because they're a known company around here, and much more known than the joke about them. So I don't want to answer questions about that. Let's see. Sir Buzz Killigan. Oh, wow. $5. Thank you. Just wanted to inspire me to pick up Call of Cthulhu. I loved it. Then Cthulhu 2020. There actually is, and it's across the room. I don't want to get up and like leave you guys and go get it. There was an old issue of Interface Magazine, which is this magazine that went with Cyberpunk 2020, in Call of Cthulhu element stuff. So it didn't really feel too to me. But if you ever want to do horror cyberpunk, there was another book, and this was an actual rule book called The Night's Edge, and it was about vampires. So I think it was kind of like jumping on the hype of Vampire the Masquerade at the time, and that's got a lot of cool stuff in there. So we are playing Cyberpunk 2020. See if you can score a copy of The Night's Edge. We played it, but we did a bunch of vampire hunters, and my game master, he was very versed in Vampire the Masquerade, so we house ruled the hell out of it. But we had a lot of fun with our Supernatural Hunter game that we played for a while. So that's a cool one. Good luck with that. Let's see. Michael Walking, thank you for the $5. I had a character in a game that I didn't like playing one too many times, and I want to know to do if killing them is not an option. Why would it not be an option? If honestly, my opinion on it is this: if a player does not like playing a character, they should never have to play a character that they don't like, and they might not like it for a multitude of reasons. Also, sometimes players, they don't click with the character. Like, in concept, they're like, oh, this is great, but then they never really find their feet with the character, and the player, and they're a much better player than this, and they're just kind of doing the lip service of the character, but they're not like diving into it. And they either keep playing it because they're convinced that maybe they'll get this one to work, and it's just failing, or they play it and they just don't like it. I recommend definitely talking to your game master, because if you don't like playing the character, you shouldn't be playing the character. If you've played it for there's the first session, which is sometimes kind of weird. So if you played it for more than 2 sessions and you didn't like it either time, no need to keep going. So talk to your GM, see if you can kind of either quietly do away with them or have them retire, kind of like that kid in Game of Thrones that just decided to become a baker. Maybe your character could just stop at the next town and be all like, I'm going to be a baker now. What are your thoughts on Horror on the Orient Express? Oh God, I so want to play Horror on the Orient Express. I have a copy of it right down there. I think you can kind of see it in the edge of the frame. So I picked that up right when we got into Call of Cthulhu, or my wife got it for me for Christmas, and I really want to run it. I also really want to ride the Orient Express, but due to kind of current political situations, it no longer goes to Turkey, which is the Orient part of it. So I really want to do the take it from Turkey to Venice, because that is the run that they're doing in both the Agatha Christie novel as well as James Bond's From Russia with Love. So I want to take that same leg at some point in the future once things calm down. And I'm pretty sure after that, I will be forced at a knife point by my wife to finally run Horror on the Orient Express. I've got it. I haven't read it. When my wife got it, she evidently did not keep the email or something that also sent the PDF for it. So I'm going to have to pick up the PDF, because that thing is a beast. And as much as I like reading the physical books, I need to flip back and forth between the PDF and the physical. But it is on the wish list. I have a huge wish list. So one day, hopefully, I will get to it. Let's see. Did I miss a review for Conan 2020 from Ramsian? No, you have not. I'm actually working on the script for that right now. It usually takes a few days to script a review to kind of get my ideas in some sort of linear order. I have a lot of thoughts on Conan. My players had a ton of fun with Conan, but Conan is weird. I have never simultaneously loved and hated a game. I don't want to use hate. That's such a strong word, but there's a lot that I love about it, and there's a lot that I really don't like about it, but at the same time. So my players, it was an absolute hit. I asked them after a couple of games if they'd rather play this or D&D, and that was unanimous. They would rather play this. I, as a game master, once we kind of started figuring out the rules, some of the rules are kind of weird to get used to at first. But once we started figuring out, we were playing it much more regularly. I never got fully comfortable with Conan. And if you've got a game master who's not 100% comfortable in a game, the games really just aren't 100%. Versus if you have a GM that's just like, yeah, I'm comfortable with it. So even if I don't know a rule, I can just make a snap judgment call, and we could keep the game moving and keep the game just plowing at full speed, because that's really the more important thing, is that the GM's comfortable and confident, versus if you're 100% accurate to the rules. And I never got there with Conan. So I'm working on that review. I don't know how long it's going to take me to write the script. I sometimes write, 2 or 3 scripts simultaneously, but I'm trying to get to Conan soon, because that one I've been putting off, because it's going to basically be like, half of it will be like this glowing, oh my God, this game is amazing. And part of it is also going to be this, oh God, there are certain parts of this that I really don't like. And I think that if it does well, and I do hope it does well, Modiphius did an amazing job. That book is beautiful. Modiphius could definitely do with an update for it eventually, but it is absolutely stunningly beautiful book. It is a skill-based game, which is my jam. It has both the hit point pool like D&D and the death spiral like both games. I've never seen a game effectively pull off both the pool and the death spiral. So very cool game. We had a lot of fun, but it's got some rough spots. I'll talk about them in the review. Weston, $10. Thank you. Mr. Krask, your channel seems to have the momentum of a runaway freight train. Why are you so popular? Okay. I saw that. Northern Express. Why am I so popular? I don't know. I think it's probably because I put on a sepia tone and a goofy hat and talk. Which, by the way, my Jack hat is behind me. So Jack is at least here in a theory. But I think it's the fact that I also do reviews of stuff that I at least wait till I know what I'm talking about for them. As far as the momentum of a runaway freight train, I hope I've been doing this for a few years. I just saw a post from 2 years ago on the 7th that was celebrating. I got my 500th subscriber, and then 2 years later on the 7th, I got my 40,000 subscribers. So, but that was pretty cool. But that first 500 took me almost 9 months to get. So I did spend the first 9 months essentially talking to myself, which is fine. If you ever watch any of those old videos, you'll know why. I did not understand how microphones or editing worked. Let's see. Goonson, thank you for 666. Greens from the Rice Record. Love your videos, especially the DM advice videos. Have you ever tried a system called Made RPG? I have not. I'm sorry. Let's see. Buyer's remorse is real with characters. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Okay, I think I finally reached the bottom. Let's see, Max and Toe. Have you ever considered writing and publishing your own D&D adventure? Thanks for the charm and humor in your videos. I've had my players have asked me if there's a couple adventures that I wrote. They're like, man, you should publish this. I'm like, well, the problem is you guys just don't know how much of that I blatantly stole from other stuff. But as far as D&D, not really. I played 5th edition. That's because it'd have to be 5th edition if I did anything. And I do know they have the thing where you can publish kind of homemade stuff on Drive-Thru RPG and the like. But 5th edition or D&D in general just isn't my thing anymore. I prefer skill-based games over that. We played that for a year and then kind of quickly went back to skill-based mechanics. So I do have my first published scenario coming out, and that'll be for Call of Cthulhu with Stygian Fox Press. They're doing a release for New Tales in the Miskatonic Valley. That was a Kickstarter. It's late, but almost every Kickstarter I've ever seen is late. But they said that the layout is done, I think, on all the scenarios but one. So hopefully that will be coming out pretty soon, which will be a story I wrote that takes place in Innsmouth. And hopefully people will like it. If not, I'm pretty sure I'll hear about it. Let's see. Okay. Whoa. Do I ever mix systems up in themes? Did Pulp Cthulhu set in shadow? Oh, absolutely. For a while, we did we did Cyberpunk 2020, which uses the interlock system, and then we discovered a fan mod called Interlock Unlimited, which made it more generic and made it a pure skill-based system. Cyberpunk 2020 is like almost pure skill-based, but there are still classes that have abilities that no other class gets. And then when we started doing Interlock Unlimited, we ended up going back to fantasy, but we did that using Interlock Unlimited rules, and that didn't work as well as we had hoped. But I actually did a fan mod, Cyberpunk rules, and one of the adventures I did was very liberally based on Cult of the Reptile God. So I have done that. And then I took the Save Interlock thing and we did kind of a pulp Call of Cthulhu-esque game for a while. And that was fun. That was a blast. But then D&D 5th edition came out. We started playing D&D 5th edition instead. And we left that for real Call of Cthulhu, which is I found to be a lot better to go ahead and play the real thing than trying to make your own. You never really appreciate how difficult it is to design a game until you're doing it yourself. And then all of a sudden, it suddenly dawns on you of, holy crap, this is really hard trying to keep stuff balanced and everything. Jack Farts, what is my favorite post-apocalyptic game / module? Man, I've played a ton of post-apocalyptic games, but they were all homegrown stuff. So the only one that I've actually played that's a published one was Call of Cthulhu, of course, which is Cthulhu End Times. There was a zombie game that they had at GenCon, and I really wanted to pick it up, but I chatted with the guy at one point in the con, and I bumped into him twice, but I never remembered to find the table. It was this really cool zombie game. So hopefully I could find that and pick up the PDF for it. But I don't have that much experience with post-apoc games. I also know Modifius finally made a Fallout RPG. They've been doing a Fallout kind of tabletop board game, but they just released an actual RPG. I might pick that up. One of my players is a huge Fallout fan, like Fallout tattoos. So I might pick that up, kind of give him a treat, check it out. But he also knows a lot more about Fallout than me, so maybe I'll tell him to run it. Let's see. Let's see. Hey Seth, any Conan / Lovecraft monster reference? Well, in Conan, there are several Lovecraftian references. If you check out my review I did for Seethers in Darkness, that one actually has a lot of Conan or Lovecraftian aspects. We actually, I think in the video, I even referenced it to the plot that was going on in our Two-Headed Serpent campaign, where because they befriended one of the serpent people. But it's because Conan and Lovecraft are like BFFs. But do I have any? I don't know. I got a ton of like Cthulhu stuff in this room. People keep giving it to me. See, Theldon 1, Twilight 2000. That's a sweet game. I played Twilight 2000 in 2000 and 2001. I played with a couple of guys. We had a lot of fun. And then 9/11 happened, and we didn't feel right continuing it just because it felt too real to life at that time. And then one of the guys who was playing with us ended up joining the Army Rangers and pretty much did all the stuff his character did. But we never picked it up after that. Kind of, I guess, once we lost the momentum because it was, September 2001, and we're like, yeah, this is not the escapism I want right now. We just never got back to it, but we had fun while it lasted. Next question: we're really situational. Can I, as a player, tell the master how I would like to see the combination of my character, the story, or is it better to avoid it? I think it is fine to tell your GM where you would like your character to go. I actually think it's very good to say this is what I would like the continuation of character story to be. If the game is still going, there's no guarantees. Either the GM might enjoy the fact that you wanted to go this way and now we're going to go this way, and it's a great twist and it's exciting. Or sometimes the game doesn't work out that way. There's so many factors in a game that if you get your heart set on this is the direction my character's story is going to go, it either works great or it doesn't, and people will be so upset that it doesn't that they can fail to appreciate really where it does lead. So definitely do talk to your GM about it. They can try to steer it as best they can, but at the same time, don't hold them to it. And if it doesn't work out that way, appreciate what you have. Don't dwell on if it's not exactly what you envisioned it going as. Now, if you mean continuation of the story, like the campaign's over and I'm going to decide what happened to him, unless your GM says like, hold on, we're going to get back to that campaign after something else and we'll continue it ourselves. But otherwise, it's once the campaign's over, it's all yours again. Let's see. Am I going to try the upcoming Alien RPG? Because you want to see Space Marine Jack. So the Alien RPG, I met those guys at GenCon. They won a ton of ENnies. Real cool guys. I wish they had something available and I would have picked that up. The Alien RPG looks beautiful. Problem is we just got into a sci-fi game right as the Alien RPG came out. So it's going to be kind of weird to get into a second sci-fi game at the same time we're trying to learn one. Because among the stuff I got at Gen Con, I got this little stack of loot here. I got my Kickstarter for Mothership, which also did really well in the ENnies. And I picked that up because I was in that window. I was looking for a sci-fi game, and the Alien RPG was announced, and Mothership did this Kickstarter, and we had just run or about to run Cthulhu Icarus to kind of get that out of my system, and it didn't work. And it was right at the same time that Mongoose Publishing reached out to me, and they said, hey, would you like to try out some Traveler? And I was like, Well, if you send it to me, I'll look at it, but I'm not making any promises, because if it doesn't look like it's going to be fun for my players and I'm not going to run it. So I can't promise a review. And Matt Sprange with Mongoose said, I am confident enough in my game that if I send this to you, you'll love it and run it. And he sent it to me, and I do. Traveler right now is what we're going to be playing, hopefully for a while. I've got a whole campaign planned out. So while we're learning that, I don't want to add on Alien, because then all of a sudden, like, as I'm trying to get everyone used to it, including myself, to suddenly throw on a different sci-fi RPG rule set, that can get a little confusing. So it'll be a while until we're all confident in Traveler before we start branching out and trying other things. So Josh Duckworth, thank you. Love your videos, reviews. Never played Call of Cthulhu, but interested after reviews. Any thoughts on Harn/Harn World? I don't know what that is. I'm sorry, Josh. But Call of Cthulhu is a hell of a lot of fun. If you do check out the reviews, which you said you are, check out the quick guide rules. That's free to download, and it has the Haunting, which is the most played Call of Cthulhu scenario of all time. And you can get it for free. Run some friends through it. There are also a few other free scenarios out there. There's some of their blah 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 free RPG Day stuff. They did the Derelict, which is a modern day one that Sandy Peterson and Mike Mason did. That one was a hell of a lot of fun. It is a lot like Ghost Ship meets The Thing. I'm going to tell you that, and then you're going to read it, and you're going to go, "What in the hell is he talking about?" It's nothing like either. But those are the two feelings I got from the Derelict. That is free. And then last year they did one called Scratch, which is modern day. I've got it, never run it, so I don't know. I've heard mixed reviews on it, but I don't. It looks good enough. I'm willing to try to run it. I just haven't had enough, I guess, free time that we could do a one shot. And that's the one that I want to do for the one shot when we have the time. Let's see. Let's see. What are your thoughts on Vampire the Masquerade, or just World of Darkness in general? Okay. So when Vampire was in its heyday back in the 90s, you couldn't avoid it, man. It was everywhere. Like, it was it competed the most for shelf space at the Barnes and Noble in the town that I grew up, because Vampire was freaking huge. There was a goth club I used to attend where they used to have this LARP of Vampire that went on the 2 days a week that it went on. It's called the Church in Dallas. That I always liked sitting out there and watching all the people LARPing, being vampires in this club full of other people that have no idea. I played Vampire exactly one time, and I don't think it was anything against the game. It just wasn't a good game. But I don't think it was the mechanics. I don't even think it was the GM. I think it was just the players. And I always wanted to play a vampire hunter. So my friend he used to run Vampire, and he was always like, "Man, you got to play this." One, he was always sold to me as being very much into politics. At the time, I was what we'll refer to as a D&D zealot. D&D or death was the type of person I used to be back then. And playing a game that had to deal with the intricacies of politics in the vampire world did not sound like what I wanted. I wanted to play a vampire hunter, and I wanted to play a human vampire hunter. And they're like, you can't do that. You'll be killed instantly. And for me, it was like when Blade came out, Chris Christopherson, that was the coolest guy ever, because you see, Blade was powerful. He was like a daywalker vampire badass ninja. And what was cool, Chris Christopherson was just a dude. And these things are faster than him. They're more stronger than him. They're better than him in any way. And he's this old veteran vampire hunter. And that scene where he blows open the wall and is like, "Get you motherfuckers at a bad time," was like one of the coolest scenes ever. And I wanted to play Whistler, and they never would let me. But then we did the vampire cyberpunk mashup game. So I got that a little bit out of my system with that, but I never really played Vampire World of Darkness outside of the video games, which was the Bloodlines, and there was another one. Bloodlines was awesome. I heard they're making a sequel to that video game, so we'll see how that works. I don't get to play as many video games as I used to. Weston Filippo, any advice on describing presenting body horror and get a chance to try a true dungeon at Gen Con? I didn't get any true dungeon at Gen Con. My schedule was busy enough that I didn't really get to do much, but it was open enough that I spent a lot of time wandering around, just because I would have panels for the writer symposium about every 3 hours. So I didn't want to like wander off too far, or then I was bumping into people. I had mentioned this. So Guy Slanders with How to Be a Great Game Master. I met him. He's a terribly nice guy, and I am a terrible influence on that man. I think within like 3 minutes of meeting me, I brought him into an area he shouldn't go to. I made him cut in line and break into a room, and then we went to lunch, and I made him jaywalk. And the whole time he was like, "Oh, you're such a bad influence." And I was like, "Yeah, by the end of this weekend, we're gonna, rob a grandma and get a face tattoo." And that didn't happen. He didn't hang out with me after that. But I think that was more scheduled than anything. Great guy. I will corrupt him. This is now a life goal of mine. But no, I did not make it to the true dungeon. But any advice on describing body horror? Man, I don't know. I just describe it. And if you can really get the mood going, where you can. It's not as much what something looks like as much as what it is doing. So if you describe some sort of slimy slug-like creature that looks like a bunch of noodles tangled together in a mass mixed with eyeballs like spaghetti, and that's creepy. But if it comes like pouring out of an old man's mouth and then bursting from his neck, that is much better of a reaction. But it also depends. The trick with Call of Cthulhu and horror is that you get your players into it, because our games are also extremely goofy. We crack a bunch of jokes, and it's sometimes hard to kind of get them locked into that mood, because normally, sometimes I can describe that and somebody cracks a joke and the mood is shattered. But if you can kind of get them into the mood before they realize they're in the mood, and then spring something on them, and you try to describe it. One of the things I always tell people when I'm doing writing, and I say to describe a good scene, the most powerful one to use is not sight or sound, it is smell, because smell is linked to memory, which means it's therefore linked to emotion. So you can actually get a very big emotional response if you compare the smell to something they're familiar with, like at that time, if you weren't like a white male of any sort of social status at all. And we mostly ignore it. I don't really deal with the institutionalized racism and sexism. I'm more inclined to deal with might come across a racist jerk, but he's already a jerk. Or if they're in trouble with the law, I might throw on, well, you're breaking these laws, like the one where you can't travel with a woman across state lines, whichever that one was called. But we ignore it for the most part. We mostly deal with the characters and just try to ignore that. If that's the baggage you're talking about, we just kind of go about the game and the adventure and kind of just leave that as it may. Let's see. Are you familiar with the story of Old Man Henderson? I am. I don't really believe in the truth of the story of the Old Man Henderson. When I've seen about that story, to me, it looks like, okay, so we got a player that was unhappy in their game, so they just decided to kind of make a sabotagey, over the top character. I don't know. It doesn't bring me joy. I can see how players see that story, and it brings them this little bit of joy of like, aha. As a game master, I look at it, I'm like, oh God. So I don't really care for it. So sorry. Okay, so we obviously got some newcomers because I'm being asked a couple questions again. What are my thoughts on Cyberpunk Red? I have the quick start rules, the jumpstart kit. I have started reading it, but I don't have enough reading of it to get any opinion on it one way or the other. The art in it looks fantastic. Hold on. So this is it. and it comes with like a little short adventure and some stuff. The box is a lot bigger than it needs to be. There's not much really in there, but it looks beautiful. I look forward to reading it and kind of taking my time, and then I'm going to pull some players together and we're going to play that adventure. So Philip, thank you. Running a session tomorrow that cobbles together ideas from a couple of modules reviewed, and hopefully Karen Hurl, thanks for always being a huge inspiration. Well, you're welcome. I hope it works out pretty well for you. I've done a lot of experimental games where before it, I'm like, man, I don't know if this is going to work or not. And sometimes it works beautifully and sometimes not so much. But as long as you have fun with it, that's all that really matters. Whether it actually follows the plan or not, in the grand scheme of things, is inconsequential. As long as you and your players have fun and you appreciate what the game is versus what you wanted, you should hopefully be fine. But good luck. Greetings from Brazil. Oh, greetings back. Okay, let's see. Greetings from China. Oh my God, what time is it there? I mean, it's Friday night. We're almost 8 o'clock now. So, I mean, I don't know all the time zones, but I do know that it's probably extremely early in the morning for you guys. So happy to have you here. What are your thoughts on paying in the dungeon in ENnies? Oh, wow. There's an old friend there. Hello, Fezzik Jr. I always paid there. We used to hang out at Denny's when we were younger, kind of between the ages of 17 and 20 was my period in Denny's. I think my record in a Denny's at one time was about 13 hours. And then we would all hang out there. It's when you had nothing else to do in Tyler, Texas in the 90s. And basically, this group of us would come in every night, and they finally stuck us in this back room that was called the dungeon. And pretty much whenever anybody with a mohawk came in, they're like, just go to the dungeon. And we had our own coffee maker. We made our own coffee. We were just the Denny's rats. It's good to see you here, man. Running a session. God, this little chat feed like flies up and down, and I never really know. Like I see something, I want, okay. It's being well read and Rob. Okay, so Brian Tinney, thank you for the $5. Does being well read in Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard more difficult not to metagame while playing Call of Cthulhu? I don't think so. Now with the Robert E. Howard's I'm gesturing to it because I can see it on the shelf and you can't. That one, I actually think it is best to for everyone to have read some Conan. They did a couple really good adventures that kind of pay a bit of an homage to some of the Howard stories, but aren't spoilery at all. If you read the story, you'll be like, I know what this comes from, but it doesn't give you that much of an edge. The closest one that I think would be any sort of difficulty with a player accidentally metagaming is to race the thunder, and that is in their quick start rules. They have two different quick start rules with two different adventures. The one of them is just called the quick start rules, has an adventure called To Race the Thunder, and it is based off a Howard story. It's the only one that I think would even be remotely spoilery in that game. With Lovecraft, a little, because if your players go to Shadowed Innsmouth, they might know that that's where the Cult of Dagon is and the Deep Ones and all that. I don't consider it that big of a problem, mostly because we were off doing other stuff. We weren't trying to recreate any of the events from the stories in any of our stuff. There are a few adventures out there that do. There's one called The Case, which is very close to the case of Charles Dexter Ward. I actually really do like the adventure, but I think if your players read it, it would give them an unfair advantage and actually kind of ruin the fun for them because it's not as much the metagaming as it is a lot of the surprise is ruined. And that's more important to me than metagaming. I don't mind metagaming. A whole video on this versus I don't want them to know the surprise because it ruins the surprise. But I don't see it as that big of a problem, depending on what sort of scenarios you're doing. I don't, because if your characters, after a few sessions, they've got some mythos skill and they've read a couple of the books, the players actually would be better off having read some Lovecraft, because now they have a little bit more of a scope of what their characters know. And also, if you play, so if you're playing Call of Cthulhu with a bunch of newbies, it's great if they don't. But if they played a couple sessions, it's best if they actually have read Lovecraft, because since they already have enough spoiler knowledge, might as well just let them have the rest and kind of see the full scope of what the kind of the Lovecraft mythos really is. Now, as a GM, I do recommend highly that you read a lot of Lovecraft. There was another book that I do recommend called The Devil Rides Out by a gentleman named Dennis Wheatley. It was hugely influential on me. Probably not the best book to recommend, because it is written in 1934, so it is a bit dated. It has a few dated ideals in it, but God, I love that book. And that to me is more what I call a Cthulhu adventure should be than most Lovecraft stories are, even though it's not actually a Lovecraftian story. I enjoy your content. Really helped me become a better GM. I recently lost a longtime group, moving to military and stuff. Do you have any suggestions on helping me find a whole new group? Man, I wish I could tell you some perfect suggestion for it. There's a lot of online communities now that do that, so you can join any of those, like Roll20 and all those. I prefer to play in person if possible, because most of my enjoyment of a game is what happens around the table, and that to me is really the beauty of the tabletop games, because I've played with two of my players for 20 years now, and another one for, I think we're about 15 in. So if you're trying to find anybody in a new area, definitely try to find where your comic and game shops are. Try to see if there's any kind of spots where our tribe often converges and ask among them. But until then, I would probably look into some of the online groups for online gameplay, or in certain forums. Sometimes there actually is a board of like looking for players in this area or looking for game masters in this area, and you might be able to get lucky there. It's always a crapshoot trying to find a new group. It's like dating, it's like, man, I finally found somebody, but they're not compatible with me, or it's horrible. How do you balance time between writing different projects, learning new systems, and running games? Wow. It's kind of all over the place. So with writing, I usually set a pretty good deadline for myself. One of the things I have to do is originally it was just doing a chapter a month. And I didn't specify how big a chapter is, so it could be a small chapter, a long chapter, but at least kept me in the habit of writing. And then after that, I went to a specific word count. Between learning new games, that's actually what I do in my off time. Then making the videos is almost pretty much a part-time job now, because a lot of those videos can take a few days to make. So it's just play it by ear. You got a lot of irons in the fire. Hopefully, when my editor gets me back my newest book edits, it does not cause any sort of lag in the channel, because I am going to be suddenly very busy, kind of restructuring or making changes to the book, whatever it is she thinks we need to do to make it the best book we can. So we'll see. Scott Knudsen, thank you. Just want to say I love the channel. Thanks for tons of great advice, and congratulations on the innings. Well, thank you. You guys are the ones that voted. The whole reason I got it is because you guys voted. So thank you. Turbo Rolls, hey Seth, love your stuff. Do you have any tips on running one-on-one solo game? Man, solo games are fun. I love them because you can really custom tailor it for the player that you're doing it for, because there's like no distractions. It's just you and them. My buddy Jesse and I have done a lot of them, and really the best advice I can give is know a lot about this character, kind of find out what they want. Sometimes it is good, depending on the type of game it is, to have an NPC buddy with them, either to kind of pick them up if they fall down. Somebody has to staunch wounds, or to be someone that they can rescue, or someone that they can talk ideas over with. Don't give them help as much as sometimes just kind of role playing back and forth, like, how do we want to approach this problem? As the player is talking, they can help them formulate ideas. So I do like an NPC buddy, kind of the Robin to the Batman. But it depends completely on what the game is. The game might be like truly solo, like you are in the bottom of a prison cell somewhere, and you manage to get out, and you're breaking out, and you have no weapons, or you don't even know where your shoes are. And that one you probably wouldn't have a buddy. It's just you and them. But like, I do recommend having an NPC if at all possible, if there's going to be a lot of interaction. But you got to play it by ear. I love solo games. The problem is if you do a lot of combat in solo games, you can accidentally incapacitate them when you don't want to. But so it's kind of this narrow edge between, is it challenging for them, or one good hit they go down and there's no one there to staunch wounds, and that's not fun. So then you end up having to capture them, and then they have to break out of jail again, and it becomes this huge epic saga, and you really but I have a lot of fun with them. Let's see what else we got. Start looking over Pathfinder Second Edition. Never played Pathfinder. Pathfinder kind of got in vogue while we had left D&D and we were off playing Cyberpunk, and then all of the different games we were using on the Cyberpunk system with. And then we got back into D&D when 5th edition came out, and hopped back out of it after a year. So I never played Pathfinder. I understand it was a lot like 3rd edition D&D. I played 3rd edition D&D. I opted to go back and play 2nd edition D&D. So, sorry. Eric considered playing Nightbane or Rifts, Palladium games of some interesting settings and themes. I always enjoyed reading Palladium games back in the day because they would have them. I never found anybody that would play with me on a lot of the Palladium games. So I had a lot of friends that knew a lot about them, and we would talk about Rifts, but like we never played Rifts. We just like talking about it, which I guess that goes back to those old days we used to hang around at Denny's. Making list Doom, my bad guy. What are some good things to put on there besides rob bank, twirl mustache, and get milk? Some nefarious things that a bad guy could do outside of twirling a mustache, which is arguably a definite need. I like the idea of the bad guy that is hunting the PCs. I've done a couple campaigns where it was the PCs on a race trying to catch the bad guy before the bad guy could catch them. We called it the Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego campaign the last time, because they had to go all over the world trying to hunt this person who was sending all these assassins and everything out after them. Man, it just depends on what sort of game you want, what all you want on there, the bad guy to do. Any advice on managing multiple NPCs in battle? Okay, here's the truth. Don't worry too much about the NPCs. You can do all the roles if you want, but basically, if you are having NPCs battling each other over here, that is time that your players are sitting there watching you play with yourself, and that's not much fun for them. It's kind of awkward. So I'll usually kind of sum it up. Like I might just roll like a couple D6, like okay, who got the highest? Okay, they're the one that took damage, and then kind of mark it off. Or I'll just kind of take off a few points here and there, but I don't go through all the aspects of NPC on NPCs during combat when I've got players that are wanting to play, because they are the focus. And I think a lot of GMs, especially when it comes to dialogue, get themselves in trouble with having NPCs interacting over here, and now the players are no longer in the role of playing. So on any sort of NPC on NPC action, my advice is always to make it as fast as possible so we can get back to the players and what the players are doing, because they are the focus of it all. Twitch, you're in the adventure Shadow over Yogg-Sothoth. What are your thoughts on it for Call of Cthulhu? Never played it. I have a PDF of it, but I never Never read it. There is a wonderful interview with Greg Stafford talking about when I think Sandy Peterson ran him through that campaign, and Greg Stafford was nerding out talking about his character who kept, I think, cigarettes in a hole in his shoulder or something. I don't know the story about that. I was just watching this recorded interview with Greg, but it kind of cracked me up watching him goob out over his own character. Matt McLeod, epic win with the ENnies. See the chat. Lobbing Origins to bring you there next year. Love from Rogue Cthulhu. So Matt McLeod, thank you. The other thing is Matt gave me this dice tower at GenCon. So this is a cool little 3D printed dice tower that he painted up. He actually felted the bottom, which is kind of a nice little step here. So great seeing you, dude. I will be getting a lot of use out of this. So thank you. NPC on NPC action. That sounds hot. That it does. Sorry, second question. You ever thought about checking out the Witcher RPG made by Artel Sorian? You know, I've heard that I would love The Witcher, but right now our play schedule's booked up. But I've heard that it uses kind of their updated version that they're doing of Interlock now, and I've been told I would love it. But I also never played the video game, so I probably won't love it as much as the big fans of the video games or the books. I just know that a lot of people love it. So, well, man, I was halfway through reading that, and it just went away. Seth, do you know much about BX or Old School Essentials? I do not. It seems like it'd be very popular in the old school revival community. I think it would be popular in the old school revival community just because I'm old and I've played a lot of the old first edition modules back when they weren't called old first edition modules. So I don't know. I since I cut my teeth on original D&D and then first edition and then kind of moved into second, which is a first second hybrid. I do have a lot that I like about some of the old school stuff that I've seen, but mostly because I grew up as a dungeon crawler, and then I started GMing as a dungeon GM. And then it wasn't until college that I started coming across some very talented role players who kind of pushed me out of my comfort zone very slowly until we started doing a much more diverse type of game. But I mean, I was always the dungeon crawl GM. I could do a mean good dungeon. How many people are in my regular play group? Right now we just brought in another, so we've got 5 players plus myself. So we've got a 6-man group, or well, we're not all men, but we got a 6-person group. And but when we did Two-Headed Serpent, we did that one with only 4 players, and I'm really good with 4 to 5 most of the time. That way I can devote enough attention to everybody and not begin neglecting them. I've done, I think 7 or 8 players was about my maximum, and that was back in college. And I don't even know how in the hell we fit around that table. We were crammed into my tiny little apartment, where we had to have 3 people sitting on the edge of my bed and another was sitting on a foot locker, and we were around this tiny crappy little table that if anybody's foot shifted into it would bring the table down. But my normal group right now is 5 players in May. We were playing favorite character with double personality disorder. So characters have a split personality. I've never had a character played with me or by myself that regularly exhibited that. We've had characters during bouts of madness or whatnot do it and do it very well. And then with Call of Cthulhu, we have slowly, over the course of many bouts of madness, had a character shift to where they have started becoming the polar opposite of that they were. But that took several sessions and several different bouts of madness to kind of slowly bring them about and have the rest of the party kind of watch them descend, versus kind of a snap, which you might have during a bout of madness that lasts like 10 rounds, but never longer than that. So good luck. Ogre Kid 12, thank you. My girlfriend loves to play a Kinder in D&D no matter what edition she is playing. What are your thoughts on Kinders? I'm for them. They're when hobbits developed shoes. Other than that, I don't really have an opinion on them one way or the other. Hobbits are the butt of many of my jokes. I have a lot of Hobbit-based jokes, and Kinders get that by default. Scratchy, pondering your sci-fi classics there. With that said, to get a time loop to work and the table to be dramatic. Getting a time loop to work at the table. Man, time would be weird to do it at a game because it's difficult for you to know what the future is going to be for your characters because dice and what players do in any situation are complete random mysteries to me. Man, I don't know. That's a good question. I've heard of GMs pulling it off. I envy them for it. I've never been willing to try that. So let's see. How still have shoes? Am I going to SoonerCon next year? God, I hope so. SoonerCon is a kick-ass convention. It's in Oklahoma City. I had not expected to love it as much as I did. I've done a lot of conventions in the Dallas area. I had gone down to Austin, done ArmadilloCon there. So went up to Oklahoma City. I didn't know what to expect because it's like, well, this could be really awesome or this could be really lame. And SoonerCon put all the others to shame. SoonerCon is a epically awesome convention. The people there are excited and fun. There's a lot of people doing cosplay. There's a lot of people in the gaming room. It's a great energy to that convention, and there's a lot of love that they put into it. So yes, I would love to do SoonerCon again next year. Hopefully they'll have me. I have to put in an application for them in the next couple of months. I think that opens in like December, January usually. Who's any advice on writing a module for the first time? If you're writing it to publish the module, definitely pay attention to how other people format the module, and also try to, I don't know, it's tricky trying to write a scenario because if you're doing, it depends on the system, greatly depends on the system and what type of game it is, but you're going to want to have some sort of intro, but you also at the same time don't want it to be where there's only one way to do the adventure because every group is differently. So they're actually all going to be approaching it different ways. And most scenarios, most published scenarios, whatever hook they do to bring you in, like in D&D, I almost always threw it out because it was there as a placeholder in case the GM didn't have an ongoing campaign. And then with Call of Cthulhu, I very regularly rewrote the intro to work in our existing campaign. So you have to have an intro, but at the same time, you need to be able to make the adventure to where a game master could take it and plug, and also have other people read it because you want to make sure that it is easy, like hopefully test drive it, see that it is easy for them to be able to reference stuff during the act of running it, because picking up a scenario and reading it is very different than you're in the middle of running a game and somebody asks a question like, hey, what's in this room? You want to be able to like get to that information very quickly as to who NPCs are or where certain stuff is. So there's actually two different types of ways you can lay out a module. The one that's easy to sit down and read on your couch, or the one that's really great to reference in game. And you want to actually kind of find that perfect way to format it to where it is easy to read on the couch and it's easy for them to understand, but at the same time, once the game starts, they can immediately flip to a section and find it. But playtesting is the big thing that I recommend. Not just you know how it works because you wrote it. Hand it to somebody else that you haven't told all about the adventure to. Don't spoil it to them by telling them what all's in there. Like, hand it to them, give them like kind of the brief description that you might find on the back of the module, and have them tell you what they think. And that's actually the best feedback you're ever going to get by it. Unless they run it and they can give you their feedback, that's the best. If somebody else can run it and they can run it well and give you their feedback, that is the best you'll ever get from anybody. So do I board game? If so, board games, I don't really board game that much. My wife isn't a big board gamer, so therefore, anytime I'm in the mood, she's like, let's do something else. So now, congratulations on your new award. Well, thank you very much, Elitket. You guys are the reason that happened. Let's see. I love your advice, tabletop RPG, Seth. You don't act snobby and you talk at a newcomer's level. I want to be accessible to newcomers. In all honesty, I think there is a point where people do become snobby. I have gone through that phase. I'll eventually do a video on that. But yeah, I think there does come a point where you do kind of forget that it's just all about having fun. It's all about playing with your friends, and that's really the most important thing here. So you should talk to everybody as simply as possible, because no matter how complicated all the rules get and the worlds get, it's really just a bunch of friends hanging out, being dorks and talking in silly voices. You can't take it too seriously. It's one of the things when people do criticize me on my videos and I get that normal hate that comes about. It's like, look, you're criticizing a guy that's put on a fake mustache and is talking in a silly voice. Obviously, I can't take this too seriously myself. Let's see. Ever played a Palladium game system? I have not. I've read through the books. I've looked at the pictures, but that doesn't count. Is there any tabletop RPG that you have played and you didn't like? If I don't like it, if I'm running it, it's not going to make it to the point that I'm playing it. I will usually pull the cord on that and eject before we get to the part where we're running it. Before I run a game, it has to pass a bunch of tests. I've had adventures that I've run that I didn't like the execution of them. There was one system that I was given for review that I did not like, and I didn't like it to the point that I never bothered running it, and because I never run it, I didn't review it. And I cannot remember the name of it, but I don't want to. I shouldn't give it because I didn't run it. So maybe it was amazing, but it just definitely wasn't my cup of tea. But as far as scenarios that I have run and that I did not like how that worked out, the most recent one I did was Crash Dive for Call of Cthulhu. I thought that I had made the necessary changes to make it playable and fun, and I was wrong. And that became kind of an awkward thing, trying to get that game still going. Mostly my fault. I think just about any adventure is runnable if you make the necessary changes. I failed in that endeavor. Let's see, how far are we into this? We're about an hour and 20 minutes. Tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and pull a plug on this in a couple minutes. So let's just get a few more in here. Give me your advice on learning new systems. Help me learn Call of Cthulhu, Cyberpunk 2020, Shadowrun. Well, I'm glad it was helpful. I remember on my video for how to learn a new system, I had one guy on Twitter call me dangerous because I don't know. He thought that maybe my advice sounded so complicated it would chase people away from learning games. And so I kind of wanted to just change my title to dangerous, as I give advice that's risky and will chase people away, even though I don't think so. What is my all-time favorite scenario? God dang. Yeah, I should have prepared that. I should have known that I'd be asked that. There are a few because it depends on a lot of parts of it. So I'm just going to list a couple for you. First edition Ravenloft, mother of God, that thing was genius. First edition, it's an obscure one. It's called All That Glitters. I think that was like the first or second D&D scenario I ever reviewed. Brilliant. Love that scenario. Call of Cthulhu, Edge of Darkness, hands down is my favorite. It's very simple, but it's extremely elegant in its simplicity. And then for Cyberpunk, one of the most influential scenarios I ever played was called Thicker Than Blood. I don't know if that's actually a good scenario or if it just had a profound impact in changing how I approach that game. Because that's a big part of it. Where are you in your life? I'm about to have to start rereading Lost Caverns of Tejoacuth, I think it is. It's the old first edition module I loved. I played it back in the day. I'm thinking about reviewing it and having to reread it again. So we'll see if it holds up after 20 years. But yeah, I'd probably start that list with Ravenloft. I found that one to be absolutely brilliant scenario. I don't see a coffee mug in here. Well, I've got a big thing of water that I should probably suck on. My player George made me this little thing. He's got access to a laser, so this says my name in the Cthulhu Relayan font. And then when we got some of the Call of Cthulhu stuff, like some of the Pulp Cthulhu, it actually has stuff written in it in that font. And I gave him a handout that had that on it. And that player sat there and deciphered what it said by using the fact that he knows what my name is as a key. So good thing it didn't have any spoilers written along the edge. That was in Two-Headed Serpent. And I think it says Shooting Deep Ones. Have I tried Cthulhu Invictus? I picked up Cthulhu Invictus. Talked about my water and it tried to kill me. I picked up Cthulhu Invictus. I actually picked up a toga and a little Caesar wig for Jack. And I picked up the GM screen. I rewatched all of Rome because, okay, I did it because I wanted to, but I rewatched Rome to get myself in the mood, and then some Spartacus and some other stuff. And I pitched it to my players, and they were like, meh. So we haven't run Cthulhu Invictus. So it really depends on what my players are in the mood for. My plan is eventually I'm going to get them in the mood for it. We're going to run a few sessions of Invictus, and then I am going to roll that into Ripples from Carcosa, which is a badass theme or a setup for a Call of Cthulhu scenario, because you play the same characters over. If my players are watching this, stop now. So you play this game, and it like starts off in Roman era, and you have this little adventure, and it's got the king in yellow, and then the characters are reincarnated into new characters, and now we're playing Cthulhu Dark Ages 1,000 years later. And as they have bouts of madness, memories from the previous game start coming to these characters. And what I'm going to try to do is not let them know that these scenarios are linked until the bouts of madness kick in and start remembering their old characters from when we played Cthulhu Invictus, and they realize they're their reincarnations and the evil has returned. And then the third scenario is like 1,000 years in the future again. So we're like, 150 or 200 years from now, and it's like on spaceships, and they're reincarnations of the same characters. I think it sounds brilliant. I haven't run it yet, so hopefully it works. So eventually I want to do Cthulhu Invictus and roll it into Ripples from Carcosa, because I've always thought that sounds like such a badass setup. I really, really want to try it. Let's see. What Call of Cthulhu module would you recommend for a first-time keeper to run? The Haunting and Edge of Darkness. A couple other good starter ones would be Deadlight. Deadlight was the first one I ran for the full group. I did The Haunting as 2-player games with an NPC named Jack. You might have heard of him. He came from that scenario. I did that one twice. And then after we did Deadlight is when I discovered Edge of Darkness. But I'd say it's fine to start with that one. Chaosium also has a book of kind of entry-level adventures called Doors to Darkness. The only one I've played in there is called Darkness Beneath the Hill. It was a lot of fun, but I would definitely look at The Haunting or Edge of Darkness. There's also a ton of online resources out there to help you with that, like different handouts you can get. Very, very cool. They're solid adventures and very simple, so it's easy for you to run them as a new keeper before you start trying to bring in a lot of rules and you're not yet comfortable with the game enough yet. So they're perfect for kind of getting you into it and walking your players into it rather than overwhelming you at first because you bit off more than you can chew. Let's see, man, I'm at my time limit and I'm still going. So I guess I'll add 5 minutes to my 5-minute warning and just keep going. Good scenario I play based off Hotel California, which involves a cannibal cult. So you check in and you can never leave. Um, oh, I like that. I'd like that if you made it like a really big hotel. Like I don't know if I have any good California ones, but something like the Stanley Hotel in Colorado, which I think that was one of the ones that was the basis for Stephen King's The Shining. But I went there a couple years ago, and they have a Stanley steamer in the lobby, and I was really fascinated with the Stanley steamers because those are cool freaking cars. But like something really huge like that. Let's see. Do I have any pets? I have two cats. I have a wonderful, sweet gray cat who is pawing at the door. Her name is Cleo. And I have a giant, fluffy, dumb ragdoll, well, half ragdoll named Titus. They're Cleopatra and Titus, and they're wonderful. But those are them. Red rum. Yes, it is. How do I handle bouts of madness? I assume you mean in game. In real life, you don't want to know. In game, normally how I handle a bout of madness is I trust my players to role play a lot of it out, but I kind of will describe the setup of what's going on inside their head, and I kind of tell them what's going on and kind of let them go. So I usually handle them for the first like round, and then after that I kind of release them, and I can kind of ping pong them if they're trying to do something they shouldn't be able to do with the bout of madness. Like it's like, oh, that's what your character, if they're sane, would do, but go for it. The best bout of madness I ever had, I had a player, his name is Scott. We were doing the Cthulhu in space scenario, Icarus, and that was spectacular because you grabbed this jar that had this weird organ in it, the hewn from a byakhee, and he convinced himself that it was his son's head, his estranged son's head in this jar, and he tried to get off the spaceship with this jar with this weird organ in it. He was talking to it like it was his son, and I described the setup. This is you look at it and you see your son's head, and you want to free it, and he grabbed it and ran, and it was absolutely amazing. It was the best bout of madness we ever had. So if you get some players you can trust that can really get into it, it becomes epically awesome because they surprise you. Because if you get them right, they know this is where like crazy town is fun. So the only times that bouts of madness become problematic is if you have, I guess, more like power gamers that don't like the idea of their character not doing what is the most optimal things. So usually you have to kind of have tighter reins on them. But if you got a really good role player or somebody that's just kind of caught up in the mood, it's epic. Just give them the loose directions and let them go, and they will have more fun with that than they do when their characters are sane. How long has this been on? Been about an hour and a half, and I should probably cash this in pretty quick. I'm just going. All the characters you do around the table, dweedles based off real people you know. I have been waiting for that question all night. No, and yes. The characters around the table came about because I wanted to have something to interact with during some of my videos to kind of prove a point in sort of a jokey way. Todd was the first, which was at the time I had really long hair, and I just let my hair down, threw a baseball cap on backwards, and talked in this bad surfer Keanu voice that was an impersonation of one of my players' former characters' voice. And that's just a caricature. But all of them have some aspects of different things that players have done, but none of them are actually based off any characters, not even their names. None of them are actually named well, the only two that are known are Todd and Mike. I've never played with a Todd or Mike that I could remember because I'm worried that somebody will be like, "Oh my God, you're making fun of me." I'm not. Dude! Yes, those are two quotes right there. Did you name Todd from an old Beavis and Butthead episode? Todd's name came about because there was a meme I saw on Facebook of a sign in front of like a bar or some sort of club that had like lightsaber night is canceled. Thanks a lot, Todd. And I thought that's the name for that character because that's always the character I play that's always screwing up. So he's named after a meme. Am I posting the stream later? Probably. How early do you recommend showing the players Strahd? Before they start getting bored. Try to keep them excited in the town as long as you can. Like try to keep the town of Ravenloft, Barovia. In my video, I called it Baravia, and I still get so much crap from people that act like they must be from there, and I mispronounced the name because they took that personally offensive. But when they get to Barovia, try to get them to interact as much as possible and like really get into the town. Maybe introduce new NPCs and kind of immerse them in it and hint about what's going on with the Devil Strahd. Always spit after you say his name. That's not in the module, but it should have been. And kind of make it like a good old horror movie. Take a while before you show the monster. Show his effects before you bring him in, because once you show Strahd, that's you want to have a good intro to him. You don't want to kind of blow that load too early. Marcella Delt, they gave some cash because I really enjoyed your videos. Question though, how would you, as being a DM, deal with the big evil bad guys scrying on the players? Do it. There was one adventure that I did recently, recently was a year ago, that I did a year ago, where the big bad evil bad guy was scrying on them. That was Tomb of the Lizard King. Not a great scenario, but some cool ideas. I love the idea for that. And also in sci-fi, it's very easy. They have it where they might find a bug on them, or the camera that's in the vent or something like that. It doesn't have to just be fantasy scrying. You can, if you're in sci-fi, the technology makes it so much better to spy on them. And now they realize with Cyberpunk, if you're ever running Cyberpunk, because I think a few more people are going to start playing Cyberpunk soon once Red comes out. That is a game with a lot of betrayal. It's one of the only games that I actively try to have NPCs do side hustles with players and see if I can get them to betray each other. They always do, which surprises me. But have like one of their friend NPCs come out later as a rat, and they've been telling the big evil bad guy what the characters are doing this whole time, and that could be cool, because then you have like that beloved NPC that ratted them out. So yes, definitely have your big bad evil bad guy scry on them if they're capable of doing it. We're almost done. You helped me learn a lot as a game master, as a player, but there's a lot of things I always struggle to explain. Thank you. I'm happy to be a help. There's a lot of old videos. I wish I could go back and rephrase a lot of stuff. Man, that would be cool. But I'm glad that the words that I gave are at least are articulate enough that you can understand, get some help from them. How do I deal with aggressive player versus player? I'm eventually want to do a video on this, on differentiating between and thank you, Weston Filippo, for the $2 of what's called player versus player and character versus character. So CVC versus PvP. PvP is players around the table. I don't want any sort of issues with my players around the table, but character versus character. I usually upfront tell my players I don't like to have characters going after each other. I think it ends up distracting. I've watched a lot of games go up in flames because you do have character versus character conflicts going on. Sometimes it pulls any issues with that out of the game, and it ends up hurting the relationship with the people that are doing it. So I frown on that. I try to discourage it as much as possible. Now, sometimes, depending on the situation, it is kind of necessary for the game, but most of the time it's not. And that is actually one of the first house rules I ever really started instigating with the group, was no character versus character conflicts, because it can quickly send a game up in flames, and it can chase away good players before it chases away bad players. So it ends up becoming worse and worse and worse as it stews. And most of the time, the players that are doing it do not mean to be hurting everyone else's enjoyment at the game. They're doing it because it's fun and they get some laughs, but at the same time, they might not intend for it to hurt everyone else's enjoyment, and kind of explain that's one of the problems with it. So they might require a little bit of meta that your characters won't screw with each other and cause problems, but overall, I think it works better. Tell you what, let's write this up. So, have I ever run a Cyberpunk Mechton hybrid game? I have not. Let me find a better last question. Video Sinister Seeker Saltmarsh. Did I ever run a sequel, Danger at Dunwater? I have not run Danger at Dunwater. I do own it. I must have gotten it in a lot or something like that, or somehow somebody gave it to me and I didn't know. But I when I did the video, I didn't know I owned Danger at Dunwater, and I have it, but never run it, so I can't review it. How do I hook my players? God, there's so many horribly inappropriate answers there. Okay, the best hooks are questions. So, okay, a master of hooks, not necessarily of great storytelling, but a master of hooks, while I'm about to say something really controversial, is J.J. Abrams. Lost existed as nothing but hooks, where you got just like, ooh, there's a good question there. So whenever you start the game, try to get them to the hook immediately. Example I gave is when I did Dead Light. I pretty much started that one very quickly. We kind of get a little role played up that they're at a party where they start talking about the occult, and then we're trying to get them to go see a medium that's traveling into a nearby town, and get them into, oh, we're going to go see this medium, and the non-believers and the spiritualism are going to become believers, and they are. And on the way there, I ambushed them with this scenario. So even though I knew it was going to take a while for the scenario went in, I had to give them some sort of hook as far as what the characters would enjoy, like immediately, and keep them doing it. So pull from their backstories, give them some sort of mystery or some sort of clue that they're going to get some sort of answer, and then hit them with the adventure and try to lead them on. Never have it where they have all the answers. Until it's all over, they should always have more questions. Tell you what, who are some of the tabletop content creators you partake in regularly? I don't really partake in a lot of them. I'll watch some How to Be a Great Game Master. Guy's a cool dude. He's got a lot of great opinions. And I'll watch Matt Colville from time to time. I don't like ingest large amounts of them. Both of them, and I at least got to tell a guy this when I met him. I can kind of say that I agree with everything they say 98% of the time, which is about as close of an alignment as I can ever give with another GM, or I think two GMs should ever be able to give to each other, which is still an A+ grade, but we're not always 100%, because I think what makes Game Masters fun and exciting is they all have a unique take on something. And if you have two GMs that are exactly alike, they're probably not great. So I kind of see like, okay, I can understand all the spirit of what they say, even if sometimes the way that they phrase it, I'm like, but those are the only two. Seth, do I fudge dice? Yes, I do. And I've gotten a lot of hate for that. But I think what is more important than what the dice say is what is most exciting for the game, be it good or bad. I'm there for the players. I'm not there to appease the dice that are all like, I told you a 14. It doesn't matter what the dice say, as long as the game is fun and exciting. Sometimes the dice are wrong because dice are not that smart. Okay, with my player's new character, should I kill off their first characters or have them missing as an emotional hook? My God. What do I recommend? Okay, so I joke with my players a lot whenever we're starting a new system and we're all making our characters for the very first time. It's like, oh, don't worry if you don't get it right. Your next characters will, because these will die quickly. That's a joke. I'd never go out of my way to actually murder them. I will go out of my way to not keep them alive if I really don't like the character, but I don't go out of my way to like murder their first characters as a hook for the second. I think that is not a good way to do it. I think that will cause a lot more problems than it's worth. Now, if you are doing a new campaign, then you can have their characters from the old campaign become a hook to bring these in. Or if they have their initial character and their initial character dies in the first game or something, and then they bring in a new character, you could use them as a hook, but don't murder them to get that. And then if they die, you could find out, oh no, they're really alive, and now the hook is to rescue them. Or you could do that Hellraiser 2, where the skinless corpse writes, "Help me, I am in hell," on the wall. Sorry, I'm a horror author. And you could use that, but I wouldn't whack a character to make a hook for the next one. That sounds dangerous. I wouldn't do that. Wolf, $20. Oh my God. Thank you. And I've been meaning to quit this for a while. I feel like I'm on the phone trying to say goodbye, and I just keep talking. Only murder your player characters if they're fine with having their said character murdered. I agree with that 95%. I have had characters that players had that were not meshing, usually with the players. But I said it wasn't that I murdered them. It's that I took away their safety nets. I didn't fudge dice for those. So I kind of allowed them to kill themselves more than the others. But usually you should talk to them, because if a player is making a character that doesn't work in your game and you get rid of the character, you haven't solved the problem. They're just going to make another. But sometimes if a character just isn't working and they get in my sights, I might just take away their safety net. Any plans to appear on a live play? My God, it took us an hour and 45 minutes to get to what I thought would be the first question. No, I have no intentions of ever doing a live play where I'm the GM with my group, or doing a recording of a session with my group. We've all talked about it, and we're 100% unanimous in the decision that game days are for us. We're a bunch of friends hanging out, sharing our lives and kind of cutting loose with no responsibilities, and a camera in the room would feel intrusive on that. And we probably wouldn't feel as comfortable just talking about our lives and kids and jobs and everything if there's a camera. And two, there might be that unconscious need to perform for the camera, which means it just doesn't make us as comfortable as we'd be if it's just a bunch of friends hanging out. So a lot of people like to do that. More power to them. A lot of people like to watch that. More power to them. Not my jam. So let's see. This is the last one, I swear. And then we're going to have to cut it off for the night, because I am getting thirsty and I'm going to have to chug that. You don't want to watch 5 minutes of me gulping. So Seth played a Call of Cthulhu game online, which is called Out of the Darkness. Yes, I did a couple games where I've played. I'll play on a live stream. I did it with the Into the Darkness podcast. Those are on YouTube. Ladybug, Fly Away Home. It was 2 episodes. And I did another one with the Into the Darkness podcast, and I can't remember the name of it. And then the Mass of Nyarlathotep Chapter 1 with Scott Dorward should be with the How We Roll podcast. I don't know if they've released them yet. We recorded them. We haven't finished that campaign, so maybe it might be worth it to wait till they're all done with at least Chapter 1, so you can listen to us all play back to back, because they've been taking us months to get together. You are an asset to the hobby, Seth. Well, thank you. Damn it, arrived too late. Well, you're here now. Let's see. You were on the How We Roll podcast with Scott. Yeah, Scott Dorward's our GM. We're running it. I mentioned this earlier. We've been trying to get this game going since August of last year. And then Joe went and had a baby or something, or his wife had a baby. All of us suddenly had all these schedule conflicts come up. And then we had our first game in March, and then our second one in May. And I think the next one we're going to try for September. I need to check the schedule to make sure. So hopefully we will get through this game, but evidently scheduling a group of Call of Cthulhu keepers that are also content creators is evidently the hardest level of cat to herd, because we've been trying to get these games together forever, and our schedules always have at least one conflict. Have I ever bait and switched against games successfully? Always wanted to run underground RPG campaign where the players initially think they are supers that are actually their alter egos. Um, have I ever done a bait and switch successfully? Yes, I have several times. I love the bait and switch. The only one I've ever done in a video that I've talked about was Dead Light. But then the Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego Cyberpunk game I talked about earlier, I also did as a bait and switch, which was spectacular. That one, basically, we gave them a job. They started planning the job, and then a bullet came through the window, blew off their boss's head, splattered them with brain matter. The lights flipped off. Guys started storming in the building, and that's when they realized that the super evil villain was gunning for them, and the rest of the campaign was spent trying to get the bad guy before they got them. But it started with them actually making the plans for doing this really cool heist and getting equipment for it, and they're all gearing up, and then boom, lights out, guys through the window, kind of like Resident Evil, I think is how I kind of pulled from when all the guys came in through the window on that one. Am I ever going to review Cyberpunk Red? Once I play it, and I feel like I can give it a good review. And 8:47, I'll tell you what, 3 minutes, and then this is definitely going to go over. Would I ever consider doing a smallage college con in Central Texas? It would be epic. It depends on my schedule. I've done a lot of small cons, so I'm. It's not like I am a big name, so I do not mind doing that. Seth, I need to eat my oats. Okay. Is that somehow not a nerdy shirt? Well, it is. It's about visiting Miranda, so either you get it or you don't. Answer me. What's your advice for making morally gray villain that still lusts for absolute power? I don't know. Morally gray villain that lusts for absolute power. That is tricky. Last question, 3 minutes, and this time, I mean, 2 minutes now. What's my favorite D&D edition? If I was going to recommend a new player to Dungeons and Dragons, I tell them to go fifth. Fifth is the cleanest and the easiest to understand. My preference as a game master, I have absolute mastery of our first/second edition hybrid. But that was a tricky game, and I know it very well because I've got years under my belt. But if somebody off the street said, I want to play D&D, what do you recommend? I'd be like, start with fifth. It's clean, and it's easy to run. It's easy to play. It's a lot of fun. Wherever use Jack the NPC as my PC. Like I ever get to play. Have I ever played Death Frost, Doom, Lamentation of Frame, Princess stuff? I have not. I'm sorry. Everyone should use alignment in their games, right? I'm not a fan of alignment. Sorry. Any ambition to write an RPG game like a system? No. I tried kind of writing my own system once, and that was a hell. Different scenarios, yes, I have a few that I would like to release. What are my house rules for AD&D? We've got a minute left, and there is no way we can get close to that. Let's just say that what we call D&D is like AD&D for first, second edition is probably unrecognizable to a lot of people because we house ruled the hell out of it. Let's see. Now, okay, so a lot of people say they don't like alignments. Real fast, I might be ending on this. Alignment, I think, is a great tool for somebody to learn how to role play, how to think. How would this person think that doesn't think like me? It's kind of a training wheels for role playing, and I think it is good for that. As a game master, alignment's really cool. If I'm like looking through a module and I see like an NPC, I'd love to have alignment in just about any game. It's like, where do they stand? Boom, 2 letters, CG. Okay, cool. I know they're chaotic good. That gives me an idea how to run them. That would be cool, but that's only as game master shorthand. But for a player, I think if you've got a new player and they're wanting to learn how to role play, alignment is a great tool that they should quickly not need anymore. Then once you don't need it anymore, it holds you back. It's like training wheels on a bicycle. After a while, those training wheels are in the way, and that's how I feel about alignment. Um, I bought the Call of Cthulhu slipcase. I blame you. Thanks a lot. Hope you enjoy it. Quick tip on the slipcase is if you pick up Peterson's field guide, it fits perfectly in there once you take out the screen and the adventure and stuff. That's why if you ever see mine on the wall, you can't see it behind me. There's always like a white bar. That's Sandy Peterson's field guide hardback. Fits perfectly in that space once you take out all the stuff about the adventure and all that. Mm, 4 minutes. I know. I'm late to my own deadline that I gave myself. I keep trying to find like a. Do I have an opinion on running Massive Analytic? I already answered that. Eventually, one day, it is a dream to be able to play that. But Miranda is a great place. Trip is horrible, though. Damn right. Much obliged for my time. Okay, cool. You guys are finally going to hang up on me. I appreciate that. I've been rambling for a while. Anyway, guys, thank you very much. I might do another one of these again. It's been fun. I'll probably have to change the time because I got people different time zones, and Friday nights. Well, a lot of people have stuff to do. But tell you what, let's go ahead and call it on this one, and then hopefully I'll have a new video up for you soon. But till next time, have a great night.